want you all to be hyped today. It's our last day of retreat. We're excited. Let's go. storm surrounding me, let it break at your name still. Call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave at your name. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Call these lungs to live and call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to be together this weekend. God, we're just so blessed to be able to see just all you've been doing in these children. And I pray that you've been able to work in the hearts of every single one of them. God, I pray that they're able to, hear the last sermon today and just feel inspired, God. I pray that everything just goes well. I pray that they go back home and they're excited to share about you, God. I pray that they see you in everything that they do, God, and I pray that they keep glorifying you in your name, your precious, your wonderful name. God, we just thank you for everyone here. We thank you for the opportunities, the friendships made, everything. And we love you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good morning, guys. Yes, there's a pumpkin. Trent wouldn't let me get through a weekend without pumpkins, apparently. So this weekend we've covered a lot of ground together. Started off very broad, very generally, talking about how God wants everything from us. Spent a little bit of time the following morning talking about how there's some things that that come between us and God and hinder our ability to progress from kind of new to kainos new, like these distractions. We talked about committing more of our time and investing more of our time into building and developing, maturing our relationship with Jesus. And then last night we talked about some of the sin and the shame that gets in the way of that. Some of these things that we believe disqualify us from the love of God. And I hope that the message last night reminded you that that's not true. And that you came and you laid that sin and that shame down up here at the altar and removed it from being that hindrance to your relationship with God. And those commitments are good. Those commitments are necessary. But what we're going to talk about this morning is that God is interested in our every day. That we're called not just to admire Jesus, but to follow his example. So we're not talking about a moment. We're talking about an entire life lived in response to God's movement on the cross. That he has moved first, and now it's our turn to respond. And our response can't be encapsulated. It can't be contained in a single moment. God is after, he is interested in our every day. So we're called to follow Jesus's example, not just admire it, not just think that it's good, but to adopt it and become it. 1 John chapter 2, back half of verse 5 and verse 6 reads like this in the NIV. It says, "This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did." So there's a couple things about this verse I want us to clue in on. And the first one is the word must. Must is an imperative, meaning that it is necessary, it's essential. It cannot be ignored. It's not optional, it's mandatory. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. And on top of that, there's that word live, and it's unbound. There are no qualifications for it. There are no restrictions on it, meaning that it encompasses everything. Nothing is off limits when it comes to the authority of God in your life. The word live also means that it's going to require some effort, because that's an awful lot of time. Our entire life lived like Jesus lived. Our everyday lived like Jesus did. That's an awful lot of time. And so there are two pieces to this puzzle that we have to commit ourselves to. The first one is maintenance, meaning that we've got to put the effort in. We've got to put the work in. We have to maintain this relationship with Jesus. And then on top of that, we have to sustain it. And that sustaining effort means that we don't just maintain it every now and then. We don't just maintain it once a week. We maintain it, or we sustain it every single day. That it is over the course of a prolonged period of time. And both of those pieces are absolutely necessary. Maintenance and that sustained effort, because this life lived as Jesus lived, it's not about a moment. It's about every day. It's about every moment. I once was at a conference, and I heard a guy give an entire talk, 40 minutes plus, on half of a verse. Half. And I want to share that half of a verse with you this morning in this one word kind of summary, this one sentence summary of where he took this half of a verse. He's looking in the book of 2 John, verse 6. 2 John's too short, doesn't have chapters. It says this: "As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love." And his point was this: he spent over half an hour talking on just this little piece of a verse, and he had written a book. This was an author whose name was Bob Goff. Some of you guys might have read his book, and he said this during the course of this talk. He said, "It's easy to fall in love. It's much more difficult to walk in love." And he made this distinction that I'm trying to impress upon you guys this morning, that falling in love happens in an instant, in a moment. But walking in love, staying in love, it requires that maintenance. It has to be sustained. Now, naturally, we fall in and out of love with stuff all the time. There are things that if you think back, even on your shorter lives than mine, that you can think back to your childhood and things that you were in love with, head over heels in love with when you were 5 and 10, that just aren't even on your radar anymore. They were your life back then. And now they're nothing. They're vestiges, they're memories, and they're nothing more. We all do this. And you're going to continue to do it because falling in love is easy. It happens in an instant. But unless we maintain that love and sustain it over a long period of time, we just fall out of love eventually, and sometimes for good reason. So I want to share with you guys a couple of things that I fell in and out of love with over the course of my life. And one of these, this first one, was maybe my first big love as a kid. What I'm going to show you guys is the reason why I woke up on Saturday mornings. It was my everyday obsession. This show and the characters within it, these were the folks that I bought coloring books of. These were the guys that I dressed up like at Halloween. These characters were the ones whose toys populated my toy box. These characters were the ones that my sister and I would pretend to be in the backyard as we would pick up sticks and we would fight these imaginary bad guys. They were life. They were my everything because they were the coolest thing going on television when I was a kid. They've started to make a little bit of a revival because Hollywood is convinced that the late 80s, early 90s is worth bringing back. And they're right, but they're doing it all wrong. But we've got these characters who I was psyched to see this new movie that came out earlier this year, I think, or maybe late last year. And it was all right. It didn't, stir up all the feels in me like it did when I was a kid, but I still watched it. So when I was a kid, my obsession, the people that I wanted to be, the people I pretended to be, were the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Okay, and this is OG Power Rangers. We're going to talk about the difference here in just a minute, but these are the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This show had literally everything a kid my age could possibly want in a television show. And even some things that I wasn't even aware at the time that I did want in television shows. So it started off with the obvious. Like I was a young boy. This show had fighting. This show had robots. This show had giant fighting robots that were also dinosaurs, which is as cool as it gets. But this show also had some stuff that I was like, I didn't even know I wanted this when I was a kid. It had drama. So initially, there was no Green Ranger. He's prominent in the middle of this picture, but he wasn't always a part of the show. But he came on and he burst onto the scene, and you're like, whoa, there's another Ranger. What? He's bad? It blows your little kid's mind. But the Rangers are good. How is there a bad one? And he's by himself is beating up the other 5 Power Rangers. And so you're like, dude, this guy's kind of awesome, but we have to hate him, right? Because he's a bad guy. So there's all this dramatic tension. And it turns out he was going to the same high school, and they didn't even know it. It's dramatic irony. That was something else that I loved. I didn't even know that I loved it. These guys, the Power Rangers, didn't even know that they were taking classes with their mortal enemy. But then it gets to a point in this show where he turns good, and it was the coolest thing. It was the most pivotal moment in television history for me as a kid. When the Green Ranger that everybody wanted to be, but you kind of felt like you had to hate because he was beating up all the other Rangers, when he became the good guy, you were like, oh, thank God, now I can like him, and it's cool. But even more than that, the Green Ranger, so all these other guys, their little spirit animal, if you want to call it that, a little power coin, were dinosaurs, which are cool all by themselves. This is how I fell in love with dinosaurs, because they gave the Power Rangers powers. But the Green Ranger, he was no dinosaur, oh no. He was a dragon, which is even cooler. And there were some things that the Green Ranger was so hype. He was so cool back in the day that there were some things that I was completely willing to overlook that, like, looking back, like, as a grown man, all of the episodes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers hit Netflix a couple years ago, and I was like, yes, let's do this. So I start marathoning these things, and like, there are some pieces where I'm like, I can't believe I liked this as a kid. But I was clinging on to this show because I had to see that Green Ranger arc again, where he went from bad to good. I was like, this is the moment. Like, I remember this being the most insane thing, that, like, world-shattering thing in my life when I was a kid. So I was like, I'm going to at least watch through that. And so I'm watching this Green Ranger, and it's the most ridiculous thing, because when he calls his Dragon Zord, he does it in the weirdest way. And I'm gonna do you guys a favor. We're gonna watch this in just a second. We're gonna watch some Power Rangers this morning. But I need to prime you, because if I don't tell you this, you're going to watch it and you'll think it's kind of silly, but you won't understand how ridiculously silly what the Green Ranger does to call his Dragon Zord really is. Because he takes a dagger out, he turns it sideways, he plays it like a flute, but for some reason it sounds like 12 trumpets. But who cares, because it calls a giant mechanical dragon out of the ocean, and that's literally the coolest thing that has ever happened. So, you guys want to watch some Power Rangers? Let's get a feel for how awesome this was when I was a kid.
Let's take him out fast! Right! Switch to battle mode now!
Regulatory sequence has been initiated. Regulatory activated.
Here it comes, here it comes.
Time for Dragon Zord!
Doesn't get you amped, you might be dead. Because that is the most hype thing that's ever graced a television screen. And I stick to that to this day. It's the greatest thing to ever happen. But the Power Rangers kept getting better. Like, I got to watch this show. There are hundreds and hundreds of episodes of this show. And I watched every single one of them a dozen times when I was a kid. And then something magical happened. They got their own movie. It was called The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. And I went to see this in the theaters. I remember begging my parents to go see, so I could go see the Power Rangers in the movie theaters. And so we went, and I loved it. It was awesome. Some things happened that we're going to talk about this morning. That were like, one of it is like, one piece of what happened in that movie is amazing. Then there's some stuff where you're like, all right, what's really going on here? Because during the course of this movie, they become ninjas, which is kind of awesome. Okay, they go and they get this like ninja power force. I don't remember what they call it, but they turned into ninjas. They stopped looking like, they stopped having these helmets and they look like straight up ninjas and gis and stuff like this, and the little belts and all that. That part was cool. I was like, all right, Power Rangers, cool, plus ninjas, awesome. I'm in. But then they stopped being dinosaurs and dragons. Like, they were done. They were over that. I mean, the dragon guy ended up turning into a tiger guy anyway, but a little bit of a downgrade, but he was still hype. But then in the movie, they go from being dinosaurs and a tiger, because those things go together, to being jungle animals. Like, one of them became a frog. So, like, when they call their giant Zords, the big robots, to come and fight, there's a giant frog that leaps into action. And I was like, that seems like a poor choice to me. But ninjas is cool. I'll stick around for that. So then the show developed after the movie, and they became, Power Rangers Ninja Force or whatever it was. And I was watching that. I mean, it was all right. The ninja part was awesome. Jungle animals part, a little less so. Oh, this is the picture of them in their ninja form. But then it changed again because the Power Rangers, like, even if you're watching them today, they change like every 2 or 3 years what their Zords are and what they're going to call themselves and all this stuff. So they went through another shift, and it was traumatic for me as a kid because they had moved from dinosaurs plus a tiger to jungle animals with a frog. And then they became Power Rangers Zeo. And they became shapes. And I am not kidding here. They became shapes. And this was it. Like, I tuned in. They were shapes. And the thing that I had fallen head over heels in love with, I fell out of love. And I never really looked back. This television show, these characters that were my life, stopped being a part of it entirely. And there's almost no evidence of that fandom in my life anymore. I fell in love with the Power Rangers. How could you not? You saw this. You saw it. But then I fell out of love with the Power Rangers. We do this cyclically all the time, naturally. It's just how we function. Now, there was something else that I want to tell you guys I fell in and out of love with, and it's always difficult for me to talk about, like in front of people, because it's embarrassing. It's like super embarrassing. I always hesitate, and it would be easy for me to just like skip over it, but I'll talk about it anyway. Listen, when I was a kid, I wore out, and this is going to be a foreign concept to a lot of you, but you adults in the room will understand. I wore out 2 cassette tapes. 2. One of them was the Lion King soundtrack. Because it's awesome. Wore it out, meaning it, like, for those of you that don't know that cassette tapes are like this big, you had to rewind them with a pencil sometimes, and you could break them just by playing them normally. So Lion King soundtrack did not survive my childhood. I played that sucker all the time, A-side and B-side, because they were equally awesome. And then there was this other one that I also wore out. And in my defense, like, I feel like I have to defend myself, because this is so embarrassing to me, but it's true. So in my defense, when I was a kid, you know, and this is the truth, you know, this is the truth for a lot of you guys as well. When you're younger, you ride in your parents' vehicles. They tend to have control over the radio. So you just kind of listen to whatever it is that they're listening to. You don't have much say. My dad, he had good musical taste. 70s and 80s rock, the Eagles, Manfred Mann, Styx, AC/DC. But I didn't ride in the car very much with my dad. Instead, I rode with my mom, who liked country. This is not a cheer moment. No. So I was brainwashed. I was indoctrinated from a young age. And at that impressionable young age, I fell in love and would go on to completely destroy, just by playing it, Alabama's greatest hits. It's true. I did it. Don't tell your friends. But there's no evidence of this unless, like, somebody plays Walking in High Cotton. Like, I know the song. I'm not going to sing it. I haven't heard Alabama in a really, really long time. I don't rock acid wash jeans or mullets. I do have beard, though. Maybe that's a vestige of this particular fan base. But I fell in love with Alabama. I mean, I wore out one of their tapes. I loved that music when I was a kid, and then I kind of moved past that. I don't listen to any country music anymore. That's where you're supposed to cheer, by the way. That was the appropriate time. There we go. Yeah, that's always a winner, this crowd. So we fall in and out of love with stuff all the time. But God isn't interested in that. He's not looking for somebody to fall in love with him, and then because of a lack of maintenance and a lack of sustained effort, to just kind of gradually fall out of love with him. In fact, he picks his metaphors when he's trying to describe this relationship that he does want with us. His primary metaphor, the primary way that God speaks about his relationship with us, of course, is familial. So it's father and son, father and daughter. But his second most prominent one in the scripture is one of marriage. So he uses marriage as a metaphor, and I love that, and I think it speaks a lot, it communicates a lot to us about the kind of relationship God is looking for with us, one of commitment, one of longevity, one of permanence. That's his ideal relationship with us. And I want to share with you a quote from a guy named Soren Kierkegaard. He was a philosopher, and he was a Christian philosopher, and he talks about why it is that marriage is such a perfect metaphor for this relationship that God wants with us, why it works. He says this. He says, romantic love can be portrayed very well in a moment. Marital love, however, marital love cannot. For an ideal husband is not one who is ideal once in his life, but one who is that every day. If I wish to portray a hero who conquers kingdoms and countries, this can be done very well in a moment. But a cross bearer who takes up his cross every day can never be portrayed in either poetry or art. For the point is that he does it every day. So Kierkegaard makes this distinction between a moment and a life. He said there are some things that you could take a snapshot of. You could snap a pic of with your phone, and it will accurately represent whatever it is that you're trying to take a picture of. You come up here and take a picture of this pumpkin, it will always be that pumpkin. However, he says that doesn't work when you're trying to capture what a Christian is and how a Christian lives. You can't take a picture of a single moment of a student or an adult affixing a piece of paper to a link and a paper chain and say, this is what it means to be a Christian. It will be a partial truth, but it won't be a whole truth. And it can never be. No single picture can, because the very fact is that Christianity, this Christian life, being Christ-like, walking in love with Jesus, living like Jesus did, it's an everyday process. It's not about the moments. It's about that every day. He communicates this very effectively, that commitment isn't measured by the I do's, but by everything that follows them. So whatever commitments you may have made to Jesus this weekend, the commitment to give him everything, the commitment to remove every obstacle, every distraction, every sin, and every shame, the commitment to walk with him every day, those commitments, they aren't about this weekend. They're about every tomorrow that follows today. They're not about rooted. They're about life after rooted. And that process, walking in love with Jesus, living like Jesus did every day, it's not going to be easy. It's not. And I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be easy. However, the last thing I want to leave you guys with this morning is that while that commitment, while the maintenance of your relationship with Jesus and that sustained effort to walk in love with him, to give him your everyday, to live like Jesus lived, while it isn't easy, one of the greatest tools for success in living like Jesus did is sitting right next to you right now. Did you guys know that the Bible talks about spooning? Did you guys know that? It totally does. We're going to read about it, like right now. It talks about spooning. It's in there. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, in the NIV, it reads like this. It says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, If 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So I told you that one of the biggest, best, most important, and greatest tools in keeping this maintenance and the sustained effort in your relationship with Jesus Christ going after this weekend ends. When I told you that that tool is seated right next to you, I'm talking about your youth ministry. I'm talking about your community. I'm talking also about your church. And in Ecclesiastes, we learn some things about this community. The first thing that we learn is that the community is mutually beneficial, which is just a fancy way of saying that being involved in the youth ministry, being involved in your church, isn't just about what you get from the youth ministry or from your church, but about what you can give to your youth ministry and to your church. That there's something in it for all parties involved. So I challenge you this morning to think about how it is that you perceive your youth ministry. Is it a place that you go to take and to receive? Or is it more than that? Is it a place where you can go and be a benefit and to give? Because there are going to be times in your life where somebody in your youth ministry is going to be struggling. They're going to need prayer. They're going to need somebody to listen. When they're going to be weak, go and provide everything that you can. Provide that prayer. Be their strength when they are weak. Rely upon one another. Community is meant to be mutually beneficial. It's not just that you need the church, it's that the church needs you. The second thing that Ecclesiastes teaches us is it says that 2 are better than 1, and 3 are better than 2. So then it follows that 4 would be better than 3, that 5 would be better than 4, and you could carry this on forever so long as you're good at, adding by 1. And this is a really easy thing to illustrate. And so I want to do that for you this morning. I want to illustrate the fact that we are stronger together. So in order to do this, I need, a couple volunteers. All right, young lady, and just grab a partner. Bring somebody up here with you. Don't smash my pumpkin. You can come on up. Got it? All right. So we're going to put you guys into a little bit of a test of strength. How strong are you? Pretty strong? I'm strong, I guess. I'll take that. We'll run with that. All right, here's a piece of yarn, right? Just a standard piece of yarn. I want you to take that in. I want you to take this in. Stand and face them, not me. I know what's going to happen. So just a single strand of yarn. So working together, don't yank it, but working together, snap that piece of yarn. See if you can do it. Yeah, pull on it. It doesn't have feelings. There we go. All right, yeah. Give them a hand. Pretty good. See, you said you're pretty strong. One piece of yarn, not bad. Now, I learned how to braid for this weekend. Don't ask me to do it, but I did it, see? So what I've got now is I've braided together just 3 of those. It's the same piece of yarn, right? I braided it together. And I want you guys to hold these with 2 hands, okay? Put the string between your hands. And I want you to do the same thing. Face the audience. Get a good grip, okay? Now, see if you can, yeah, go for it. See if you can break it. Pull, pull, pull. Be careful of the stuff behind you. Like, scoot back a little bit. Oh! All right. Was that a little bit more difficult? Definitely. But they did it, right? So give them a hand. That's pretty good. Now, I have another one. Now, this is a rope by definition. This one, okay? So this one, where'd it go? This one was 3 pieces of this, right? Now, this one is 3 of these braided together. So now we're up to 9 pieces of yarn strung together, okay? So I want you to take it, step back that way just a hair. There you go, right there. That's probably good. So remember, grab it top and bottom because it might slip off otherwise. Let's see if you guys can do it. I'm going to stand right here so you don't bash your head. You can go, like, whenever you want. Go ahead. Hey, anytime, ladies. Like, I have a church to get back to you at some point today. You got it? What's taking so long? What's the problem? Huh? You didn't have this problem with the other ones. What's the issue? Oh, so you can't break it. Are you sure? Okay, one more good shot. It looks like she's water skiing, like really poorly. All right, thank you, ladies. You guys can take a seat. Simple concept. We're stronger together. This is a diagram of this yarn. We're an awful lot like the strands here, just these fibers, rather. Individually, not much tensile strength. We don't have that much strength in isolation all by ourselves, but when we come together, we're stronger, we're better. So I want to leave you guys with this. You guys need one another. If you guys are going to collectively live like Jesus did, to walk in love with Jesus, to commit yourself to the maintenance, and commit yourself to a sustained effort of growing and maturing in your faiths, you need one another. So I'm going to get super Methodist on you right now. Super Methodist. And we're going to do some liturgy. This is straight from the hymnal that you can find in the back of pews or chairs, however your church rolls. And this is a covenant. This is a commitment that I want. I will read a call. And as you're responding, this response is a commitment not that you're making to me. Because who am I to any of y'all? You're not making any commitments to me. No. When you guys are responding, I want you guys to think of it as a commitment to those of you or those of your neighbors that are with you this morning, have been with you this weekend. We'll be in the bus with you on the way home. We'll see you next Sunday at youth. That you guys will make this commitment to one another, to your youth ministry, because you need one another. This is a covenant. This is a promise. It's an agreement. It's a relationship. And this is how I want us to close down this weekend, because Rooted is great. Rooted has been awesome. But Rooted is 3 days in October. 3 out of 365 and a quarter days. 1 weekend out of 52 in a year. We can pour into you, and we have over the past 3 days. But now it's up to you. Now I'm challenging you guys to commit to walking together in love with Jesus, being that supportive community, that mutually beneficial community to and with and for one another. So I'm going to read the call, and then I'll invite you guys to respond with the words up here on the screen. So will you nurture one another in the Christian faith and life and include these persons before you in your care? Will you respond? Who walk in the way. May it be so. Let me pray for you guys. Father God, I've been grateful for every opportunity to teach from your word this weekend and to be challenged by your word this weekend. And as we all prepare to pack up and load up and go home, God, that you go with us. You go with all of us. It's hard wrapping our mind around that, but it's true. You go with each of these churches home. And your word has made it clear to us what it is that you want from us. You want us to walk in love. You want us to be supportive and encouraging, beneficial to one another. God, that we would not just see the youth ministries that we're a part of, the churches that we're a part of, as a place that we go to receive only, but also as a place that we can go to give. To be strength where there is weakness, to be support, God, when there is stumbling. God, to love you and love one another. You call us to walk in love, God, because you want our everyday. You don't just want 1 weekend in October. You want our everyday. And that's difficult. And it's impossible to do that all by ourselves. So I'm grateful for the communities that are represented here, not just the youth ministries, but the churches from which they came. I would pray your blessing and your presence in each and every last one of them, that these covenant words that they just shared, that they just spoke over one another this weekend, as they go home, that they would ring and remain true, that they would commit to encouraging and holding each other accountable for the maintenance of their faiths, and that they would make sure that each and every last one of them are doing all that is necessary to sustain those faiths, so that all of us, God, may continue to grow in our relationship with you. And it's in your name we pray all these things. Amen.